As we enter 2018, it is becoming clearer by the day that we are in the middle of a transformational period, redefining the very foundations of the space industry. At the heart of this shift is the principle of reusable rocketry, which SpaceX successfully demonstrated repeatedly in 2017. This trend has not gone unnoticed, with both China and Russia now developing partially reusable avenues to reach space. Similarly, other aerospace companies, such as Blue Origin and United Launch Alliance, are developing their own reusability concepts. For a fully reusable system holds the promise of lowering the cost to access space by a factor of up to 100, and in doing so, opening the entire solar system to human exploration and settlement. In this Mars update, we're going to be looking ahead to the next major developments in reusable rocketry. We'll cover SpaceX's plans for 2018, including the Falcon Heavy's maiden flight, NASA's Commercial Crew Program, and finally, we'll examine the implications of proposals to end support for the International Space Station in 2025. First up, let's quickly recap the impressive strides SpaceX made towards reusability in 2017. When you consider that just a year ago, SpaceX had been reduced to a single operational launch pad following the Amos 6 incident the previous September, it's truly remarkable that by the end of the year they had launched more than double their previous record of Falcon 9s. They began 2017 with a successful return to flight, launching the Iridium Next 1 mission in January from their sole remaining pad at Vandenberg Air Force Base Space Launch Complex 4. By mid-February, they had restored the ability to launch from the US East Coast by bringing online the historic Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center, used during both the Apollo and Space Shuttle eras. By the end of March, for the third Falcon 9 launch from Pad 39A, SpaceX proceeded to successfully launch a previously flown first stage for the SES-10 mission, the first time an orbital-class rocket had ever been reused. Indeed, if 2016 was the year SpaceX perfected landing first stages, then 2017 was the year when reflying them became routine, with 5 of their launches using so-called flight-proven first stages. In June, SpaceX pioneered reusability of the Dragon cargo capsule by reflying the Dragon from the 2014 CRS-4 mission on the CRS-11 mission to supply the International Space Station. This practice of reusing Dragon capsules is now standard, with the CRS-12 mission in August marking the last mission to use a newly built Dragon cargo capsule. Alongside these developments, SpaceX carried out repairs to Space Launch Complex 40, the pad damaged in September 2016, returning it to action in December with the successful CRS-13 mission. And even this mission proved historic, being the first time a Falcon 9 first stage and Dragon capsule were both simultaneously reused for the same mission. By the end of the year, SpaceX had managed to launch once every 3 weeks on average, with 18 Falcon 9 launches, 28% of which used flight-proven first stages, and 14 first-stage landings, all of which were successful. Given this impressive resume, one has to wonder how 2018 could possibly top it. But SpaceX, like all of Elon Musk's endeavours, is never one to shy away from ambitious goals. Now, with 3 operational launch pads online, potentially as many as 30 missions could fly this year. But if you've been paying attention to the news lately, it appears that one mission in particular is about to take the centre stage, the long-awaited Falcon Heavy. Standing 70 meters tall, the Falcon Heavy is a 3-core variant of the Falcon 9, consisting of 2 previously flown Falcon 9 first stages on the sides and a specialized center core strengthened to withstand higher loads and stresses. With a combined total of 27 engines, the Falcon Heavy will deliver 23 kilonewtons of thrust at sea level, enabling it to place 64 metric tons in low Earth orbit when the rocket is used in its expendable form, making it the most powerful operational rocket in the world by a factor of over 2. However, much like the Falcon 9, the Falcon Heavy has been explicitly designed with reuse of its first stage in mind. Following launch, the 2 side cores will boost back to the launch site, landing near simultaneously at Landing Zone 1 and Landing Zone 2. The central core, having burned for longer, will not have sufficient fuel to boost all the way back to the launch site, and so instead will land on a drone ship in the Atlantic. The second stage then continues onwards, injecting the payload into its target orbit. And the payload for this first demonstration launch will truly be something special and unique in the space industry. For instead of a simple test mass, as is standard for first launches of a new rocket, SpaceX will be launching Elon Musk's own Midnight Cherry Tesla Roadster. The resulting orbit will be an elliptical orbit around the Sun, drifting as far away from the Sun as the distance between Mars and the Sun. It will essentially be the first part of a Hoffman transfer, but because the launch will be taking place a few months before the optimum 2018 launch window, the Tesla and Mars won't coincide in the same positions. So the result will be the Tesla being left in a heliocentric orbit around the Sun, where it should stay drifting through the vacuum of space for on the order of 1 billion years. As we speak, SpaceX are going through the final preparations to launch the Falcon Heavy. Last week, they successfully conducted an 11-second static fire test, where the 27 engines of the Falcon Heavy ignited whilst the rocket was held in place by hold-down clamps. With this crucial test complete, after years of development, the Falcon Heavy is finally ready to launch, with a target date of February 6th. So why is the Falcon Heavy so important? Well, simply put, this will be the first super heavy lift vehicle since the end of the Space Shuttle program, but with reusability radically driving down launch costs. With the Falcon Heavy, reusable launches to low Earth orbit of around 30 metric tons for less than $100 million will finally be realised, cheaper by a factor of 4 than their closest competitor, the Delta IV Heavy. And this will have wide implications. For at a time when NASA's own super heavy lift vehicle, the Space Launch System, is unlikely to fly before mid-2020, the promise of a dramatically cheaper alternative, available years beforehand, has not gone unnoticed by the White House. Indeed, the Falcon Heavy could potentially prove the ideal vehicle to enable an affordable return of astronauts, and potentially even tourists, to the vicinity of the Moon in the next few years. And if SpaceX can demonstrate all this and more with the Falcon Heavy, then the odds are good that they could receive additional funding from the US government to accelerate development of their next generation vehicle, the Big Falcon Rocket, or BFR. In many ways then, the Falcon Heavy could be the catalyst that breaks us out of the quagmire that has kept humanity in low Earth orbit for close to 50 years. So I wish all the best to SpaceX with their upcoming launch. Though Falcon Heavy has been catching all the headlines, it isn't the only development to keep an eye out for this year. Learning lessons from the 21 first stages returned to date, SpaceX are currently testing what will be the final upgrade of the Falcon 9, the Block 5. Explicitly designed to be reused 10 or more times, each Block 5 booster will feature temperature-resistant titanium grid fins, retractable landing legs, a thermal protection coating for re-entry, and a reusable heat shield to protect the base of the rocket. In addition, it will be able to launch heavier payloads, with the thrust of the engines uprated by 7 to 8% at a lower cost per launch. The Block 5 will also be the variant of the Falcon 9 that astronauts will eventually fly on, but more on that later. The first launch using a Block 5 is currently expected around April, after which SpaceX's fleet of Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets will all gradually transition to Block 5 cores. SpaceX also have a number of other exciting developments taking place that you should definitely keep an eye out for in 2018. Firstly, they are conducting experiments to attempt to recover the payload fairings on Falcon 9 missions. For this purpose, SpaceX has attached thrusters and a parachute to each half of the fairing, used to direct them to a recovery boat. Little is currently known about how the boat, officially called Mr. Stephen, operates, though speculation is that a large net will be suspended from the protrusions seen in this image. If SpaceX can successfully recover fairings in 2018, each of which costs around $5 million to build, then the Falcon 9's cost could drop even further. This year should also see the launch of the first test satellites for SpaceX's Starlink constellation, which is definitely a topic I'll be covering in a future video. And we should also see the end of construction on SpaceX's fourth Launchpad over in Texas. Personally, I'm also hoping that we'll see further news on the development of the Raptor engines, part of SpaceX's long-term goal to send people to Mars. And moreover, how SpaceX's next-generation BFR and spaceship could play a role in missions to the Moon in the 2020s. Meanwhile, NASA has been hard at work on their Commercial Crew program, which ends to hand over transport of astronauts to the International Space Station over to the private sector, such that NASA can focus on crewed deep space exploration. Originally targeted for the end of 2015, underfunding of the Commercial Crew program has seen deadlines repeatedly shift, with the two launch providers, Boeing and SpaceX, now targeting their first flights towards the end of 2018. On Boeing's side, they are developing the CST-100 Starliner, designed to launch crews of up to 7 to the International Space Station on the Atlas V rocket, and be reused for up to 10 missions. Last year saw Boeing unveil the Starliner spacesuit, prepare Space Launch Complex 41 for human spaceflight operations, and complete 2 of 5 parachute qualification tests. They are currently producing 3 Starliner crew modules, preparing for operational test flights later in the year. Their current schedule calls for a pad abort test in May or June, simulating an escape from an Atlas V in an emergency, followed by an uncrewed demonstration launch to the International Space Station in August. If all goes well, then this mission will be followed by a crewed mission, notionally with 1 NASA astronaut and 1 Boeing employee aboard, to the International Space Station in November. SpaceX meanwhile have been developing the Dragon 2, or Crew Dragon capsule, also designed to launch crews of up to 7 astronauts on the Falcon 9 Block 5, and to be reusable for around 10 flights. Having already successfully conducted a pad abort test in 2015, last year saw the first qualification tests of the Crew Dragon parachutes, along with the official preview of the spacesuits under development for operational flights. This year, SpaceX are in the process of producing 6 Crew Dragons, testing their environmental control and life support systems, upgrading Pad 39A with a crew access arm, manufacturing 4 custom suits for NASA astronauts, and conducting water recovery training exercises. If all goes to plan with this busy schedule, then the first uncrewed demonstration mission will launch to the International Space Station in August, and it remains to be seen whether Boeing or SpaceX will be the first to launch. The first demo mission will then be followed by an in-flight abort test, where an uncrewed Dragon will fire its Super Draco thrusters to escape from a Falcon 9 at the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure. This will demonstrate the Crew Dragon's safety features, and be followed shortly thereafter by the first crewed demonstration mission, taking 2 NASA astronauts to the International Space Station, notionally in December. Once Boeing or SpaceX have completed their 2 demonstration missions, they will then be certified for regular flights with astronauts to the International Space Station. However, it's worth emphasising that the current target dates for these missions could slip, and more than likely will slip, potentially into 2019, with a recent report by the United States Government Accountability Office concluding that SpaceX's Crew Dragon may not be certified until December 2019, and Boeing's Starliner may take until February 2020. Certification for SpaceX's Falcon 9 for humans will additionally require 7 flights of the Block 5, which is partly why the design will be locked down after this point. With this caveat, it seems likely that neither Boeing nor SpaceX's crew missions will be on track this year and will probably slip to next year, but I do still think there's a reasonable chance that we'll at least see the uncrewed demonstration flights this year. So what about NASA's own plans to send astronauts beyond low Earth orbit? Well, this is a topic that I've discussed in a number of previous videos, and whilst it seems that the current US administration appears to be focused on returning humans to the moon, much of this talk has been relatively light on details to date. However, some clarity may start to emerge in the near future, as on February 12th, NASA's 2019 budget proposal is due to be officially revealed. The expectation is that this document will direct NASA to utilise public-private partnerships to provide transportation and landing services to the moon. Certainly nothing controversial there, and in fact over the long term this could save billions of dollars by involving companies using reusable rocketry such as SpaceX and Blue Origin, instead of exclusively relying on the expendable Space Launch System. But what is notable is where this funding is expected to come from to support these partnerships: the termination of NASA support for the International Space Station as soon as 2025. For context, NASA currently spends around $4 billion per year to staff and maintain the space station, which took 10 years to build at a cost of nearly $100 billion. Even with the space station now complete, 40% of NASA's human exploration budget is still spent operating the space station. So whilst ending direct support for the space station would certainly free up capital to support deep space exploration using crews, it does also pose risks to the commercial space sector by removing the only current permanent destination in low Earth orbit. At this point, defunding the space station is simply a proposal, and no doubt many people will come out both for and against the notion. But I'm really interested to know where you all stand on this issue. So over on the top right of this video, somewhere up there, you'll find a poll that asks the simple question: should funding for the International Space Station stop in 2025? I'm also really curious to hear your reasoning, so by all means please drop your thoughts in the comments down below after voting. Right, so that about wraps up the first Mars update of 2018. I'm sorry it's been so long since my last video in October, which is mainly due to my PhD simply demanding a substantial fraction of my time. So I've been thinking about ways that I can produce more content for you more regularly, particularly given that we're nearly at 10,000 subscribers, even though my time as of late is quite limited. Firstly, I'm still going to be making Mars updates, but because each of these takes a long time, normally between about 4 or 5 days of full-time work, I'll probably be limiting those to about 6 times per year. On the other hand, live streams are much quicker to organise on my end, and offer me the chance to speak to you directly, so I'd like to try an experiment this year. About a week or two after each Mars update video, I plan to host a live stream to continue the discussion based on the most interesting of the comments that you leave in the video, alongside of course giving you a chance to ask me questions live on the air. The first of these live streams will be held on Sunday, February 11th at 1500 UTC, or 10 AM Eastern Standard Time, where I'll be discussing your thoughts on the future of the International Space Station, and hopefully we'll all be celebrating a successful launch of the Falcon Heavy by that point. Until then, I'll sign off, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you at the next live stream. Thanks for watching. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and if you haven't already, then feel free to vote in the poll on the future of the International Space Station just over there on the top right. And if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to subscribe to catch future Mars mission updates with all the latest news on our journey to the Red Planet.